Hello and welcome back to the High Performance Nursing Podcast. I'm very excited that you're spending your precious time with us today. Now, are you in for a treat? We have got Gail Carmody here from Coaching for Healthcare. Gail, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Liam. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you here. So before we dive in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gail. So Gail has been working in healthcare now for 40 years. During this time, she's been in many roles. She started her career as an RN and then quickly moved up to Deputy Director of Nursing and CEO within the private sector. Um, Gail also has a great interest in business and moved into business development manager from this role and established her own medical consulting business working across Asia and Dubai. Amazing. This has given Gail so much vast experience across all sectors of healthcare, which we will unpack today. Now, Gail uses all of her skills, knowledge, and wisdom to coach healthcare professionals operating her own business coaching for healthcare. Gail has an MBA, she's an RN, and she also has a Master's of Management. And you're an NLP practitioner and coach. Welcome. Wow, what an amazing bio. I'm so excited to dive in. So let's kick off. Where do we begin? Let's kick off with talking about, in your own words, how you built your career up to that level, like building from RN right up to Don, CEO. Talk us through that. Tell us your story there.
Okay, thank you, Liam. It's amazing because as a junior RN, I remember having my first exit interview from ICU as a student nurse. Remembering I trained in the days that we trained in the hospital. And she said to me, "What are your career expectations?" And it just came out. I said, "I want to be in management." And this is like 6 months into my nursing career. I had no actual concept as to what layers I needed to go to get into that position or what I needed to do, but it was an inspiration I always had. So that started from very early days. So I think the form of training that we had in the early days was that we were expected to take a lot of responsibility very early in our career. Because there was only one RN sometimes to 76 patients and the rest were students.
Wow.
And so we as students had to really step up and take a lot of responsibility. And it was just assumed that we would take that responsibility and cope with it. And I think that was one of the defining things of directing me into management. And for me, always being confident that I would be able to do it without any issues. In our nursing training, it was assumed that we would be able to deal with any problem. So we just had to learn how to do it. And I think I took that attitude on with developing my career. So that was sort of the basis of how I had the confidence and the insight into knowing that I'd be able to do it without any issue.
Yeah.
So once I finished my training and moved into the private health sector. I was partly in the public sector and partly in the private, and it was always assumed that we would take on responsibility of being after hours manager, after hours on our shift, and then if there was after hours manager role needed, we did it, and we just did it. So I had a lot of early training in my nursing that gave me the capability of not only knowing I'd be able to do it, but also working with all the different people at different levels right from the beginning. So I got to see how people worked, how they felt, what their issues were from a very early stage. And I was always aware of that. Even when I went up to CEO and in my consulting business, I was always aware of every level within any institution, any healthcare facility I was in. So I was aware of the kitchen, I was aware of the cleaner, I was aware of the doctor, I was aware of whoever. So I kept that in perspective, that I knew that all those people had to play a role in making sure that that facility ran well and the patient got a great delivery of healthcare. So it wasn't just the nursing care, it wasn't just the doctors, it was everyone that made that facility function that gave that holistic approach to the great care for the patient. So So just I'm really sort of stepping ahead there, but I think those early learnings taught me that.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
And then as I, sort of evolved into after hours management and then into deputy director roles, I thought, well, I really need to underpin these roles with some education. So that's
Mm.
why I went off to do my Masters of Management, first of all.
Yeah.
And I chose my degrees not particularly associated with nursing,
Mm.
but they were broad. So MBA and Masters of Management were broad. I could use those in any industry,
Yeah.
and that's why I selected them.
Yeah.
So I didn't go with a Masters in Health, or which I could have done by that stage because university education was in. Um, but I particularly thought about what degrees and why I would do them.
Mm. Mm.
So I did them across all sectors, and that was with having the thought in mind in case I wanted to step aside and do something else, which I didn't do. I stayed in health. So I think that that's a good thing for people to do if they're looking into management. But of course, there's a lot of nursing staff that go into particular specialties and fields, and
Mm.
there are degrees associated with those.
Mm. Mm.
So once I did the CEO role, and after I did my MBA, I had a great interest in the business side of it. And as you
Mm.
know, healthcare runs on business with finances
Yeah.
and all those type of things and how that works. So I then moved into quite a big role across a really large public private sector facility in Sydney, and did business development, which was just fantastic. It was just so exciting. It was just so
Mm.
different. So that's why, like, as you listen to me talk about these different roles, you can see what the opportunities are within nursing.
Mm. Mm.
What career, if you want to develop a career, how you grow your career, you can see what opportunities are there and why they're there. So once I did 10 years in that role as business development manager, enjoyed it thoroughly, met so many people, even, officials like I shook hands with Cardinal George Pell. I
Wow.
mean, today that's not a big thing because he's not looked upon, upon as
Yeah.
being great. He's had all those issues, but there were just opportunities to meet and see people that I would have never done in any other role,
Mm.
any other job, but nursing. So I then actually teamed up with a colleague, and we formed the management consulting business, and it was medical,
Mm.
all in medical, helping specialists set up their rooms, set up their business, helping doctors grow their business,
Mm.
ways of growing it, what the behind scenes were for them to set up a business, how they develop partnerships and all those type of things. And just by way of chance, I was asked to go to Singapore and work with some doctors there. And that opened up the doors I did some work in Indonesia as well and across in Malaysia. And that led on to work in Dubai.
Mm.
So it was all very interesting, and it just goes to show what nursing can do for you and
Yeah.
the doors it can open
Yeah.
according to your interests and your career path.
Mm. Mm.
But the interesting thing too and then I'm digressing there. Then from this, I've come into coaching because it's a lifestyle choice.
Mm.
I wanted to give up all those long hours of working and traveling
Mm.
in healthcare, and I wanted to actually give back because I'd seen for many years the burnout, the stress. It's been all of my working career. It's not a new thing,
Mm.
which today's nurses don't realise. It's not a new thing.
Mm.
It was never spoken about before. Nobody talked about it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So it was there though. So I wanted to give back. And that's why I selected coaching because it
Mm.
was some way I could help and work with my colleagues and give back to my profession.
Mm.
But what I was going to say before that is working internationally, it's great to know that nurses and doctors are actually the same everywhere.
Yep.
Go to another country and you're thinking, oh my God, they're all going to be different. they speak a different language, they'll do things, but basically they all have the same, interest of caring for patients. They're basically the same in every country I've been to.
Mm,
They all have,
mm,
as we know, each specialty here has its peculiarities. It does in other countries as well,
yeah.
exactly the same. It reflects. So that was actually one key learning I took away from my travels and working with internationally, was that we're the same everywhere.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of difference.
I love that. That's so,
Yeah,
so interesting. That's been my lived experience, coming from the UK to Australia in quite similar countries, but also working in Fiji, is that, yeah, the same issues are faced by all clinicians globally. Um, and maybe that helps some people, have a bit of solace about what's going on in the world at the moment, that we're all kind of going through it together. I just want to commend you on your amazing career. And I love the story that you keep reiterating, which is you can do whatever you want with your nursing
mm,
career. And I think that
mm,
that one statement is so freeing for nurses listening. That's why I started this
mm,
podcast, is because over the last year, I've been nursing for 12 years. I'm here 12 years, but no one ever said, you can do whatever you want. No one said, I didn't feel like I had that from any aspect, university, college, my first job. And I just love that that's what you are, telling us today and reiterating that
mm,
story and are living proof of that. Um,
mm.
I'm curious, a couple of things. Do you think obviously this comes up all the time and we hear it on the floor,
Yeah.
the old days versus the new days, the quote unquote old days of the hospital training versus university training. What do you think about that whole kind of debate that goes on all the time around, should we bring it back to the hospital training? 'Cause it sounds like it set you up for a really solid career. What are your thoughts about that?
Look, I loved everyone that did hospital training loved it. It
Yeah.
was an amazing 3 years. We had to work hard. It was like going to war together,
Yeah.
and we had to live together. We had to live together. We had to
Yeah.
work together, and we were so young. And I worked under the Catholic system, so you could
Mm,
imagine what that was like.
wow.
So you know, we did 10 straight nights. 10 straight
In
nights.
nights.
Like, did you question it? No. I didn't question it. Like we did, you might work 12 hours, have a few hours off, short shift, so you come back again.
Mm,
It was just assumed that that's how you would work. And we didn't question it.
yeah.
Number one, because I guess we didn't know how to question it, but it didn't do us any harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It actually built our character.
Yeah.
Now, because I've been in the industry for so long, and I've actually been through the hospital-based system, and I've actually seen the university-educated system, to me, there's no great difference as in the end result.
Mm, yeah.
It's just that the hospital system, when we finished as a third-year nurse, we were probably already equal to a fifth-year RN
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
because we just had to do it. We
Mm,
had to do it. It was just that we had to do it. But as far as the education and knowledge goes, it's no different.
mm,
To me,
mm,
it's equal. And all of us, from the day we finish, we have to continue learning.
yeah.
We all have to continue learning.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you only learnt that there and we learnt this here. We all have to continue learning as we go
Mm,
forward. So whatever's new comes, new evidence-based information comes, we all have to keep up to date with it. We
yeah.
all have to learn it.
Yeah.
So I think that there's no, at the end of it, there's no difference.
Mm,
One's not better than the other. Just I think the hospital system was just a bit more advanced in
mm,
taking responsibility and going forward, I guess. But I don't know.
yeah.
Um,
I like your standpoint on that.
maybe if they had the hospital system, but with upgraded education
Yeah.
within it, that would be terrific.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I think that there's scope there to ease the integration into the profession for people. I think that that's what the hospital system obviously offered you guys, because you knew it. You were living and breathing it. Whereas now, sometimes as a clinical facilitator, I'll go and work with students and they're only allowed to do mornings for like 4 weeks. And I'm like, how is that a true representation of what your life will be like as a nurse? And how do you build the resilience to work from
Mm,
like a morning to a PM to a night shift and all of the things that come with the reality of being a nurse. So it sounds like the hospital sector training really set you up for success in that sense.
It did very much so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think too, the other positive I have for hospital-based training is it actually eases the staff shortage situation
Yeah. Yeah.
because you've got hands-on.
Mm.
You've got hands-on. And with the hospital system, I guess it would be a better outcome if you had a few more facilitators. In my time, it was just the one poor RN that was trying to manage everything on the whole floor and obviously couldn't give us any time.
Yeah.
And so it was the third year or the second year that trained the juniors,
Mm.
is how it went. So, with the refinement of the hospital training system, I think it could be very effective.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. Maybe there's lots of chatter about this online on Facebook. I've been seeing it recently. People, it comes up in waves, doesn't it? And I'm always just curious people's opinions on it. So thank you for sharing
Mm.
that. I'd love to dive into exploring what a day in the life looks like as a director of nursing and a CEO. Because I think a lot of clinicians on the floor might struggle to understand, like, and there's always this perception at the lower, down on the grounds, where everybody's like, "What's happening up there?" They need to come down and be on the floor, and there's all of this narrative and chatter. Can you shine a light on kind of what that looks like day to day, and what kind of work you're doing when you're in a position like that, and how that's impacting the broader organization?
Yeah, I know there's often miscommunication between the floor and that role because you just don't have time.
Mm,
And that's part of what the role of the deputy director should be, is to be that interim person,
yeah.
feeding back the information and dealing with some of those issues. But of course, if there's major issues, you need to deal with them as well, being the director of nursing.
Mm,
But there's a lot of admin side involved. There's a lot of problems, issues, growth. So you're dealing with, give for instance, I haven't been in the role over COVID, but imagine being in a director of nursing role over COVID, where you've got policies changing daily, you've got
mm,
COVID outbreaks on the floor, you've got nursing staff going down with COVID. Just that simple thing without the actual running of the facility and all the other health policies that you have to make sure you're up to date with, your
mm,
OH&S, your HR policies. You've got to be on top of all that. You have different departments, but you still have to be aware of what's happening in your facility with each department and how it comes
mm,
together. And then you've got all your committee meetings. So the committee meetings deal with every department of the hospital and every specialty. It's not only the committee meeting, it's what goes into the committee meeting, what you
yeah.
have to do behind the scenes, and then what comes out as the outcome, the actions out of that. So there's a lot of work involved um, in just each committee meeting.
Yeah.
And you have about 12
Committee
or
meetings,
14 of
committee
those.
meetings.
Yeah, imagine how many committee meetings you have. And so you have to ensure people are following up and people are doing their work, and it's up to standards, meeting policy,
Mm,
and that the outcomes are followed up, and then that's followed up and fed back into the next meeting. And then you have all your clinicians,
mm,
and you work with your CEO and your clinicians with another set of meetings. And, and so they have to do a certain amount of work to go into each meeting and outcomes with that as well. And then you may have issues with clinical issues with patients. There
mm,
might be an adverse outcome with someone, and so you need to deal with that. Then you have new products coming in. You may have new machinery coming in, etc.,
mm,
and you have to evaluate and figure out, is that going to be effective for your facility? You also have to look at the finances.
mm,
Are you within budget? Are you within your working hours? Um, is each manager coping? Is each manager meeting the needs of the nursing staff in that area?
mm.
Are they up to date with what's happening on the clinical side of that area? There's just numerous things that you're
So
thinking
much.
about each day. And the average hours I worked were probably 12 to 14 a day. And
Mm,
that was just
mm-hmm.
to try and cover and to go to the meetings.
Yeah.
Often there were meetings of an evening, so it might be 5 evenings a week I'm going to meetings and all through the day. So it's
Yeah.
a very busy position. And
Mm,
then, of course, you're taking the flak from the up here and from
yeah.
down here and from the clinicians and the
Yeah.
staff here. So you've got balls in the air all the time,
Mm,
and you have to know what's under the balls and beside the balls.
There's a
You know,
lot of
it's just, yeah,
crisis management, isn't there? There's a lot of day-to-day kind of reactive crisis management just by the nature of the work. But I think that that's
mm,
really helpful for people that work on the floor, that maybe have those thoughts to hear, because what I've seen to be true is what you said, is that dons, ADONs tend to, and even nurse unit managers and educators as well, as you move up the chain, there's this kind of like unspoken rule that, you're going to work extra hours for unpaid for free, because the workload is just immense. Now, it's
mm,
very valuable and it's great for your career growth, but also if you're somebody that doesn't want to be putting in extra time, and it becomes quite impossible to actually survive and do well in these roles because of the unspoken expectation. Is that your experience?
mm. Very much so, very much so. And that's actually what led me to coaching,
Mm, yeah.
because I probably would have averaged in my whole career probably an extra 5 hours a day, 4 to 5 hours a day.
Well,
And I just assumed that was what I was expected to do. And I didn't really, think it wasn't a good thing.
mm,
But then I saw other people and how it was wearing on them and how they couldn't cope. But it actually had a very detrimental effect on my life. On my marriage broke down,
mm, mm,
and I had a very difficult relationship with my daughter.
yeah,
And it was all because I was at work.
yeah, yeah.
It was all because I was at work. So
Mm,
I think that I think today people are becoming a lot more aware of the necessity for work-life balance.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I think the days have gone where we give our life for our job.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the challenges with nursing, is that no matter what level you're at, we still very closely attach our identity to our profession, and we kind of
Yeah.
become it, right? And we really lean into it. And but like, well, a good nurse would do this, and we tell ourselves these stories instead of stopping and challenging them. And like you did, what is this costing me to work those extra
Mm,
5 hours every day? And for those
mm,
listening, ask yourself, what is it costing you to stay back for the 2 hours that you're not paid for? Or if you do want to become the CEO, take into account that you have to be so strict about your boundaries, and is that possible, and how the system is currently designed? Do you want to keep battling the system, or do you want to
mm,
find work that lights you up and aligns with what you need? Is that what you
mm.
see when nurses or doctors or clinicians come to coach with you?
Yeah, they've come into the system. I actually have a lot of younger doctors coming and
Mm,
nurses.
yeah,
I think, I think because I think it's great because they're starting to question early,
yeah,
and they are finding it really difficult, even from early on, how they're managing the expectations of their time and of them as a person and emotionally,
mm,
and they just don't have any balance. So I think that that's one thing that really needs to change in health and in
mm,
the system. But the system's such a huge machine, such a huge machine.
mm,
I don't know how the system just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think we all get caught inside. That's what I see it as.
yeah, yeah,
And I think it's getting bigger and chunkier every day.
mm,
So I think that for nursing staff at all levels, and all healthcare workers for that matter, they really need to start taking care of their emotional side,
mm,
physical side, and mental health. But I also think, Liam, it should become a much bigger responsibility of the organisation,
yeah,
of the system or the organisation.
yeah, yeah,
That it becomes part of our education and learning. I would love to see personal development
mm,
in education,
yes, yes,
all educations,
yeah,
so that people know how to protect themselves, how to give themselves self care, how to manage their emotions, how to have a bit of life work balance.
mm,
That's where they would learn it.
yeah,
A lot of organisations try to do it at this end, where the doctors are 50 and 60. Well, they've already caught in the system. That's too
yeah,
late. They've already ground these ones down underneath here.
mm,
So I'd love to see it in education is
yeah,
where it needs to be.
yeah.
I think that's the only place that's going to make change.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, I think that's a really valuable insight. Especially with your experience, because for me, when I was at the nurse unit manager level, I started to question being like, how can I really influence change here? I've got 50 people in my team, and how can I offer more to these people and show them that they can still grow and develop and they can have balance? And it was just like, pushing crap uphill, for lack of a better word.
Mm,
It was just so difficult. Hence why,
mm,
like yourself, I thought maybe I can tackle this from the outside in, and I can help people external to the system, and really help them see that they do have control and they do have power, and put the humanness back into nursing. I saw something this week that said human first, nurse second, and that really resonated with me. It's so simple, but we often flip it and have it the other way around.
mm,
I'm curious what
mm,
your experience has been in transitioning, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. You've built an amazing career and you've built it up to this point now where you're running your own business. And
mm,
every time that I've transitioned, I've had to have an identity shift. Like I've really had to
mm,
realign. And I think that people underestimate that. And that's maybe why we have a lot of the burnout, the misalignment, the fatigue, the imbalance in the industry. So, talk to us about your experience personally and in coaching of the transition that happens every time you move.
That is an excellent point. Absolutely excellent point. I had a very difficult time,
Mm.
even though I'd made my mind up that I was going to change career. But I still had that. Oh, are you coaching? Oh, like it failed. Like I'd come from here, a senior consulting role.
Mm.
Oh, oh, you're coaching. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah,
So, and I did have. It took me a lot to transition into being a coach and accept myself
yeah.
as being a provider of some other service to health professionals. It was a
Mm.
big transition, very difficult. I had to actually do a lot of work around it.
Yeah.
I had to have coaching myself, which
Mm.
I often have coaching anyway, but I had to have a lot of coaching around it to make that transition because I did
Mm.
feel as though maybe I was failing, maybe I wasn't
Mm.
doing the right thing, even though my heart really wanted to do something different and do it. So
Mm.
that's a great point because I think a lot of people do find it difficult. And as you said before, we identify ourselves as a nurse or as a don or as a something or other. And but
Mm.
we're not. We're us. We're Gail Carmody, but we identify ourselves as a role. And I'd done that. I'd entrenched that for nearly 40 years, and I didn't even
Yeah.
realise.
Mm.
So that was a
What do you think?
fabulous point that you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Thank you. I'm curious what the point was for you when you went, oh my goodness, like I have been identifying as this person, this role, sorry, for so long, and I need to make a change because that's what happened to me. I literally went to coaching, had some therapy, and I was like, hold on, and I kind of like felt like I woke up to it all. I was like, this, I'm completely out of whack here, and I just had a moment. What was that moment for you?
Well, you know what was the catalyst for me? I realised that I was not telling people I'd made a change. And
Mm.
then I was saying to myself, well, why aren't I saying it? Why don't I want to say it?
Yeah.
And that's when I realised that, maybe I feel I'm a failure. So that's when I went to
Mhm.
coaching and had to do that actual transition thing
Yeah.
to get through it.
Yeah.
So when I realised I wasn't telling people and I was sort of avoiding people a bit and thinking, oh, I really can't say I'm coaching. So it was at that point I thought, well, I really need to get some help because I heavily identified myself as a senior person in the past,
Mm.
and I've changed.
Yeah,
So it was at that point, really.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Um, it's amazing that coaching for me is just raise my awareness, and I always say that that's what coaching is, right? Like coaching is about raising our awareness to our, our subconscious thoughts and then getting to decide intentionally how we want to show up in the world. And like
Mm,
just running with that, regardless of what
mm,
happens. And I am curious because jumping from like, running your own business, like CEO level, to doing something new, like running a coaching business, which in the healthcare care space is still relatively new here in Australia. Um, what challenges did you face in doing that? We've touched on a few of them, but like I can imagine CEO is quite lucrative financially, there's the prestige that comes with it. and then starting a business and all of the things that come with that. So talk us through that.
Well, the business side was easy for me. That
Mm,
that was quite easy because I'd already had experience in that anyway. And I think being older and already having a lot of contacts uh, in the healthcare system, but when I started approaching them to tell them, offer coaching for their doctors or their nursing staff, or offer packages for them or whatever, um, I got a lot of resistance about what is coaching?
mm,
Do
mm.
we need coaching? So it wasn't about me; it was about coaching.
Mm,
But I think if I hadn't have felt already so familiar with them and very confident in approaching them, and being a part of the healthcare system and knowing full well they need a coach,
mm,
uh, I probably wouldn't have lasted. But yeah, it was the resistance. And even people that head up the wellness programs in all the big organisations like the RACGP and the
mm,
local health districts and whatever, they only see it as something for the leaders, like for
mm.
senior people.
How interesting.
And I keep saying we should be bringing it in for juniors. We should be putting it into the education system for them.
Yeah.
Um, they don't have a very good knowledge of it.
Mm. So how would you describe the difference? Because often when I talk about coaching with nurses, they say, "Oh, that's mentorship, right?" How would you describe the difference between mentorship and coaching?
You know what I do? I say coaching slash mentorship or facilitation
Mm, mm,
because it changes people's perception.
yeah.
And they sort of click to mentoring a bit better than they do to coaching.
Mm, mm,
So, and then I often have to explain what I will help them with in coaching.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's still taking quite a lot of education.
Mm, mm,
People that come to me know they want to change, but they're not quite sure how, and they have a conversation to figure out how I can help them change.
mm,
So that conversation obviously helps them. But I think still coaching is a very underutilized and unknown entity in healthcare.
yeah.
It could be used that all senior nurses should have a coach.
Yeah.
All doctors should have a
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
It just should be a standard
Yeah. I love.
part of HR
Yeah,
really.
it definitely needs to be integrated into policy. I love how aligned we are on that because that is like one of my visions is like, how can we, make sure that everybody in healthcare has a coach and that we have access to it? And I think preferably externally to the organization as well.
Very much so.
I
Very
think,
much so.
and I think maybe, I don't know, I'd love your take on this. Like, is there a fear maybe that, having somebody external and people talking to them from within the organization, that maybe there's a bit of, I don't know, gossip culture or sharing information that we should be sharing about culture. What do you think's driving the fear, or have I just made that?
I think a lot of it is they think that they can manage the cost within their budget better if it's internal.
Yeah, yeah,
I think a lot of that is the case
mm,
from the people making the decision.
yeah,
Because if they have to get external coaching, then it's a proposal, then it has to go to different managers, and then it has to be explanations, and then it has to be followed up. So it's all a process.
mm, mm,
And then it's obviously you've got a figure written there, they see, but if they do it within their budget,
yeah,
they don't see that number.
yeah, yeah, mm,
So I think a lot of it's driven by budget and money and the psychology of how they view it,
yeah,
the
yeah.
money side of it.
So
But
interesting.
I do agree that it should be external,
Mm,
not internal,
yeah.
because you're external to all the politics and all the goings on of the institution.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So valuable. And it always comes down to money, hey, at the end of the
Mm,
day. And it would be so interesting to see, and there will be data out there on this, like the cost of the burnout pandemic at the moment and the impact in the industry and, the longevity of that, as you've mentioned, versus the cost of starting to really invest in people. Most
mm,
nurses want to stay in the job that they're in for the long term. They
mm,
love it. They love their work. They love their
mm,
patients, but it's
mm,
managing the culture, the toxicity, the poor leadership,
mm.
and the increasing workload that they need help with. And it kind of falls into that missing semester. A few of us talk about this online quite a bit, like the missing semester, that personal development aspect that needs to be integrated in at the start of their careers, for sure. And then sustained as you move through, and you get all of the support as you move forward. I'm curious how coaching has transformed your life. What has coaching given you
A whole
in
new
your life?
perspective.
Yeah.
A whole new perspective. I didn't even know it existed. Couldn't have even imagined what
Yeah.
I've learned. I came into coaching thinking I'll do a coaching course, which I did, and then I thought, oh, I'll get a set of questions. I'll have a set of questions, so I'll ask you the questions, and then that's all good. And at the end, I'll sign it off and say, "Oh, thank you, Liam." And then when I started just the coaching course, I thought, my God, this is about me.
Yeah.
I have to do all this. I thought I've been looking after people for 40 years, and I didn't even know about me. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? One of the biggest things is that I took away, and it struck me right at the beginning, is that I was never present.
Mm, mm,
And then I thought, well, I was never present with me either. Um, and I don't know if that's a nurse thing for protection.
mm.
Like, you know how doctors actually wore a white coat because it was a psychological barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
And I think that I did that not being present as a barrier. When I look
Mm,
back in retrospect, but when I started doing coaching, I realised I had never been present for a patient or anyone.
mm.
I listened to them, but I wasn't actually present.
Yeah. How interesting. That, like, just
Mm,
that awareness. And I think that for me and for what I see is that a lot of us try and build a relationship with the career and the identity of being
yeah,
a nurse, but we don't build the relationship with ourselves. And
that was me.
I feel
That
like
was me.
that was my story as well, my journey for sure.
Mm,
And I was trying to put on this
mm,
facade of who I should be versus just who I
mm,
authentically am, and then let it happen
mm,
from there. So, of course, anybody that's listening that resonates with that, I you
mm,
might hit a brick wall moving forwards, and we're here to support you
mm,
with that. But it's
mm,
so fascinating, the psychology piece of it, and I think that yeah, it's one of the things that definitely needs to shift within the industry. Um,
mm.
so tell us a bit more about coaching for healthcare and what you do in coaching for healthcare.
So, coaching for healthcare, I coach all healthcare professionals that come to me, and they come to me with all sorts of reasons. It doesn't have to just be work. Some people have come to me to help them find a partner,
Yeah, wow. I love
but and buy a house, and so there's all sorts of odd things people come to you for, but. And a lot of it's personal issues that they've never been able to deal with or talk to anybody
that.
about before.
Mm,
Um, so it's a mix. I've had such a variety of things for people come to me for,
yeah.
and I think coming back to nursing, I think my experience in nursing and dealing with so many people
Mm,
on so many levels in so many situations, and it'll be the same for you.
mm,
Um, has put me in a really good position to be present and understand and be with the person and figure out how they help them figure out
mm.
how they can progress.
Yeah.
So, and some people have come to me with some funny stories, and some of the doctors have only been like 26 and 25, and of course I'm a lot older. And I think some of the things they've said to me, if I hadn't have been in nursing all these years, I would have. I can't even repeat some of the things that were said. But as you know, you just take it all because
We
it's all
do.
in confidence.
Yeah.
We just listen.
Yeah.
But sometimes I sit back and laugh and think, if I hadn't have been all these years in nursing, I wouldn't have been able to cope with those stories.
I love that. It's a
Because
testament.
as you know, in nursing, we hear it all.
We do. It's a testament to the psychologically safe space you've created for them to divulge and, and share all of that.
Well, I was thinking, wonder why they feel so comfortable in telling me that. And I'm so much older and they're just comfortably talking to me about. this type of information. And anyway,
I love that. That's so good. So you work
yeah.
with clinicians across the boards, all specialties. I'm curious. I know you work with doctors and nurses, and other people as well. But do you notice the difference between medicine and nursing? Is there anything that's unique to one or the other that people kind of
You know
experience?
what is one of the most commonest factors? I work in, because we're now online, I do international,
Mm,
as you would too,
mm,
because we can go global.
yeah.
And do you know what one of the most commonest factors is for doctors is, and not so much nursing staff.
Mm,
Nursing staff usually need help with something, a particular issue, and they can progress it pretty quickly.
yeah.
Um, so they're a little bit, I do find there is a little bit of a difference, and they're a lot more open
Mm,
and they speak more freely. Um, I think because they're so used to speaking freely with in teams and with their patients. So they just, and I don't have to elicit the information so
mm,
much. They're very good at giving it. So with doctors, I find that 90% of them lack confidence.
mm, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not blatant out there. It's, as you know, you go through the coaching
Mm,
process
mm,
and you find these things out. So a lot of it is comes down to confidence.
yeah.
So I do a lot of confidence work with them.
Mm, mm,
And now after a few years in coaching, I can pick that up really quickly.
yeah.
When I, first session, usually I can pick
Mm,
it up.
mm,
And that, applies to them not passing exams, not getting promotions, not,
mm,
doing well in interviews.
mm.
As I drill down, I find that a lot of it's lack of confidence.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think it's because
Mm.
it's a more of a competitive industry and there's just a lot more like there's more milestones for them to achieve as they build their career? Do you think that's what it relates to?
With the confidence,
Yeah, yeah.
with the confidence factor. No, the confidence factor actually comes usually from childhood.
Mm, mm. Thank
Yeah.
you for bringing that.
There was a study done by, is it Peter Rohn, I think, or yeah, Peter Rohn, or I think his name is. And he found that more than 85% of the world's population lacks confidence.
Mm,
And it's usually an incident. It can be small, it doesn't have to be traumatic. Uh, and it happens between the ages of 0 and 7.
mm,
And it happens with usually a family member or a relative, teacher,
mm.
religious person, whatever, someone that's significant in your life. And that's carried through. And so when I work with them, I always go back to that
Yeah.
and get them to drill down, and they can usually find an incident. And that incident is then reflects on their life.
Mm, yeah. Isn't
So
it fascinating
it's
what
an
we bring?
interesting one.
Yeah, like what we
Mm.
bring from our past to our present day,
Mm.
and that often we don't
Mm.
actually know or are aware of what we're actually running, the stories we're running, the patterns we're running. And often, coaching is a beautiful thing where in NLP, where you can go back to that and kind of look at it um, from afar and then kind of rewrite that story. Very powerful work. I imagine they get
Mm.
great results from that.
See, and that's why it's coaching so important, because that just doesn't relate to their work; that relates to their personal life as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So they get benefit all round.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We've got our graduate career launch program at the moment where we help nursing grads get into their first role, and they
Oh,
think they're coming in for a CV, and they are. They're getting a CV and a cover letter and the interview stuff. But the side effect of learning how to self coach within that group has transformed most of their lives. Like they're losing weight, they're making more money, they're negotiating
yeah,
things,
yeah,
they're seeing their worth,
yeah,
and I'm like.
yeah,
They had a bit of a giggle with me yesterday saying, Liam, I didn't think I was coming in for this, but I'm so glad that now I can stand in a busy emergency department and I can have all of those thoughts come up from my past. And then I can
yeah.
just take the action anyway and deal with
Mm,
the relative that's screaming in my face and be really objective
mm,
about it. There's such
mm,
power in gifting ourselves the ability to
mm,
coach. So I'm
mm,
super grateful that we connected and that you do this work. And I'm sure that
mm.
we will continue to connect moving forward. We're
Yeah,
very aligned
yeah.
in what we're looking to achieve. So I love that so much.
I mean, I love nursing. I mean, it's been a great path for me, and there are a lot of paths you can take from it if you want to.
Yeah.
But it's always managed. It's in it, same with any industry. It's just managing that other side of it.
Yeah.
And coaching's a fabulous way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared today, your career, the diversity in your career, the amazing work that you do, and all of your insights into, you know, what you think the future of healthcare could look like with coaching embedded firmly into it. Is there
It would be
anything that
magic.
you
It would be magic. It would be magic if we could.
Oh my goodness. I genuinely believe that it would transform the industry. I think that it is the
Mm.
missing piece. I've bought into that story and I'm running
Mm.
with it. I think it's one of the main things that could really help us transition how everything
Yeah.
operates. Yeah.
Mm.
So we'll just keep working at that, keep plugging away. Everybody listening, keep advocating for coaching and come and coach with us.
We're here. We're here.
um, as we wrap up, I'd love for you to share maybe like, you know, the best piece of advice that comes to mind that you'd love to offer the high performance nursing listeners from your amazing experience and career. What's one thing that, you know, has really stood out to you over the last 40 years that you'd like to share?
I think enjoy your work. Enjoy what you're doing. If you're stuck and you're not enjoying it, don't continue. Take a different path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you're in a toxic environment, move on.
Yeah.
Don't stay there. Even if it means you think you're getting a promotion or whatever, get out if it's a toxic environment.
Such good advice. Yeah, yeah. Follow that for sure. Love that.
Yeah.
Gail, where can people find you? Online.
They can. I've got coaching for healthcare. I've got
You're on all the platforms, aren't you? Facebook.
I'm on all the platforms. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm
Insta.
on. I'm on everything.
And
So I'm there.
perfect. And you're at coachingforhealthcare.com.
Just ring me. Just phone me.
Okay. We will put all of the details in the show notes. But Gail, thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing experiences with us, and look forward to connecting.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's been
My
amazing.
pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to everyone out there listening.
Yes. Go and follow Coaching for Healthcare and get in touch. And until next time, everybody, stay safe and stay forever curious. We'll see you in the next episodes. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast episode, please take a wee minute to leave a review. It would mean the absolute world to me. If you are ready to start taking action in your career and you need some support, why wait? Come and join my private Facebook community. The link is in the show notes below. Within the community, we take what we discuss in this podcast and we put it into action. Currently, I am looking for nurses who are ready to stop playing small and invest in themselves to create the life and the career they want to live. If that sounds like you, then please get in touch. Until next time, thanks for listening, stay safe, and stay forever curious, my nursing friends.